let me introduce Pat. Patricia Hackett is Guyanese born, as you would soon hear from her accent. She's been a woman's activist for over 20 years in Guyana. She was educated at the University of Guyana and trained as an educator in not only within the university, but in her many jobs as an educator, education administration, as a journalist, and of course, she was also trained in gender. She's one of the earliest students to have done this Summer Institute course in Cave Hill in 1994. I think that might have been the second offering of the course of that Summer Institute. Pat has worked at the University of Guyana Library, and she also has worked at Geology and Mines in Guyana at that library for 10 years. In addition, she's lectured in language and communication part-time at the University of Guyana. So already you see she has a very broad scope of discipline as well as interest and skills that she brings to her work. One of her primary jobs, however, and this is where I did meet Pat and had the pleasure of working with her for over a year and something, is at the Ministry of she was the Gender Affairs Coordinator for the British Virgin Islands. The Gender Affairs desk falls under the Ministry of Health and Social Development. And Pat was the person who liaised with us about the writing a gender policy for the national gender policy for the British Virgin Islands, which we subsequently did. But the period of working with her also allowed me to understand her commitment and the way in which she sustains an interest in gender. While one of the things she had done, she achieved many things at the BVI in addition to piloting their national gender policy, which, by the way, has been successfully passed and is being implemented. But she, and we all know why we clapped for that, because of our Trinidad situation. But while there, she was actually able to introduce and initiate a number of other gender policies, the Domestic Violence Protocol, the Domestic Violence Act in 2011, the Domestic Violence Act in 2011, and initiate gender awareness workshops for the private and public sector. She has also carried out, Pat is something of a researcher. She loves research, as you will see from her interest in taking on this for us. She had carried out an ECLAC study, a regional study on women and unrecognized work in the economy in 2011. Her last post, which is why we find her here in Trinidad, was at the ILO office in Port of Spain, where she was the Library and Information Management Officer, where she was also carrying out research on gender issues. Her topic today, and we welcome her for this, because I think increasingly we have understood that one of the pressures, perhaps one of the, invisible areas of life, as we understood the double burden of work and so on, has been what is now being referred to as work and family life balance. People may also know that the UWI is engaging in a gender policy process. They have in this current strategic plan that they are going to pass to write a gender policy. And so this topic, for two reasons. One, as another area that we think as an institute we need to get involved in. And secondly, because the UWI is also writing a gender policy, which we are involved in. We think this is something that we need to take on seriously and begin to introduce for best practices that we can even situate first at the university and broaden out. Pat's topic, women and men reconciling work and family life, of course, is very much part of that subject of a gender policy. And also, I think, more than anything else, something that interests us in terms of our daily lives and how we function. So, Pat, thank you for joining us. We welcome you, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I'd like to welcome you. And I promised that my presentation wouldn't be boring. I promise at the end of this presentation we shall have a very conversational discussion. And there's some things that I'm going to present that I hope will pique your interest. And I also would like to say I'm very grateful to the Institute and to Professor Mohammed and Sumner and the rest of the staff for inviting me and for working with me on this project. And as I was doing this research, it is very, very wide and interesting. We can spend the rest of the day talking about how we women and men cope, and no men in the room, so we have an imbalance in the gender here. So I'm truly grateful and happy and privileged. And so without any further ado, I'd like to welcome my special friend Beverly. We did the gender course together in Barbados. And since then, Beverly and I remain very good friends, 1994. Thanks for coming, Beverly. Well, for many decades, dual career couples as well as single parents have juggled their work schedules with reconciling family and work responsibilities. I'd like to add this piece before I go on. Maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago, women were not allowed to work in the public service in the British Caribbean. I'm not sure about the developing countries, but I know for sure once you want to become a nurse or a teacher or join any of those professions, you could not have been married or have children. And as time went by with the different women's conferences, the Nairobi conference, the Copenhagen conference, I think all of those things changed and governments became practical and allow women to be employed and have a family. Because I remember when I was going to school, most of my primary school teachers, they have husbands and they have children. And that was because of the policy then in the British Caribbean. And that was very discriminating for them. And maybe up to today, there's some professional women in those days who don't have a family because they chose career over family, while some chose family over career. So I thought I should also say that as part of the history. But we have come a long way, haven't we? We have more women now, according to statistics, in the labor force, juggling work and family. Okay, and they do that from childcare to household chores and assisting with their children's schoolwork. They have to adjust their work schedules as one of the coping strategies to strike a balance. And I can tell you that from experience, in my own experience as a student, and having one child used to drive me crazy. Working and going to school because I was putting all my assignments in front of her, in front of everything, because I want to pass. I have to be successful at the university. So I personally never strike the balance properly, I must admit. So we have to adjust our working schedules, and as one of the coping strategies. And in some cases, too, women and men have to access affordable and appropriate child care and elderly care services. And by the way, the burden of home care after work is increasing also. Especially, I've been talking with a few people whom I know also, relatives, close friends. They have a full-time job and they have a disabled parent at home. And that parent is home alone and just contact by telephone to find out how he or she is doing. And that alone is stress, I think, for the working man or for the working woman.